because that is true for us. The biggest limitation in the mind of the human being is that he believes he cannot do something. And that's why Henry Ford, the famous saying of Henry Ford, he said that if you tell me that you can or cannot do something, I agree. Either way. He said, if you tell me that you can or cannot do something, I agree. He said, why should I argue with you? I mean, if you believe you can't do something, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. But if you decide to change your mind and say, you know what, I've been wrong all along. I am sure I can do this thing. I'm going to find a way of doing it. I also agree. I don't know, some of you are on my emailing group and you would have read an article I wrote called The Power of Yet, Y-E-T. If you haven't read it, send me an email, I'll send you the article. Last one, 7.1. I just thought about it just now and I didn't want to change the title to 8 secrets. I keep it at 7 secrets, 7.1. That's what you learn from Microsoft, right? Don't worry about who gets the credit. 2 reasons. Number 1 is because that is a limitation to the spread of your ideas. And number 2, you will always get the credit. Doesn't go anywhere. There's a Harry Truman, the same guy who invented that saying which says the buck stops here. He also says another interesting thing and he said, it's amazing how much gets done if you don't care who gets the credit. And that is the last of the secret success, and that's where we are. So I will close at this point, and any questions and so forth that you would like to ask, if there are any, I will be happy to answer.
So, do you have any questions?
وَإِيَّاكُمْ.
You can SMS the question to 019 268 2783. The number will remain anonymous, inshallah. We'll delete it thereafter.
Those are my emails and websites. Yawarbaig.com is the business website. .org is the Islamic website, and and that's the email. So do anybody, if you wish to email me, you can do that. Yes, any questions? I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions, anyone?
Great, lovely.
You have a question? Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Question regarding what you mentioned earlier on focus. When you focus on something, is it right to just limit your focus to a handful of things, or can you focus on multiple things at any one go?
I believe that it's important to focus on only one thing, not even a handful of things. One thing. Now that one thing, you might define it in such a way that it comprises of a couple of more things. That's possible. But unless you're focusing on one thing, it's more than likely that you will spread yourself out too thin and in the end not achieve what you wanted to achieve.
So what in the, say for example in the business world where, for example, you have multiple projects that are taking place, how do you kind of refine your focus to make sure that you're not going to be spreading yourself thin?
By looking at in the project that you're doing, looking at where are your key strengths, and you focus on projects which help you to work with those key strengths. Now that may be several projects, that's fine, but it's your key strength that you're looking at there, right? But if you are doing too many diverse things, the problem with unrelated diversification is that, which is that it tends to spread you too thin, and obviously you're not the expert in all of them, and so some of them will And the things that you are actually expert in will also take a beating, because your energy and so forth is going into things that will be obviously more difficult to do. So they take away a lot of stuff. It's a call that you have to take. When I started in my business, for example, in consulting, at that time there were three major things that were in the scenario. One was recruitment, because that was the time in the 90s, early 90s, the IT companies had come into India and a lot of people were recruiting for IT. And so therefore, everyone and his wife was a recruitment consultant. So when I started my business in 1994, when I launched my company, people said, why don't you go into recruitment? So that was one option. The second option was to do sales training, but just teach people to sell. And the third one was leadership development. Now, what I decided was, I said, what is closest to my heart? What do I love to do the most? And for me, that was a no-brainer. It was leadership development all the way. So I said, recruitment, I'm really not adding any value. Taking somebody's CV from here and handing it over to somebody else. Yes, you make money, but I'm not interested in that. And I find no excitement in that, so I'm not going to go into that. Sales training, well, same kind of reason. Leadership development, absolutely, that's what I love to do. That's where my interest lies. So I consciously chose to pick leadership development, which means that I chose not to do recruitment and not to do sales training. That's a tough decision, especially at a time when I needed the money and there was money to be made in those things. But today, 20-something years down the road, I am extremely happy that I took that decision, because my recognition globally and everything else today is based on leadership development. And that would not have happened if I was also in recruitment and I was also here and also there. Another thing which happened, one of the reasons which told me that I was doing the right thing was that people were very allergic to recruitment consultants, because you don't want me to come in your organization because you don't know who I will take away from there. But at the same time, I still have to go talk to you. So it was a kind of suspicious, relationship with people. But with me, that didn't happen, because I was not in I made it very clear, I'm not in recruitment. Goodbye. So now I became a mentor, I became a coach, I became, all sorts of good things. And that opened a lot of doors for me in terms of business. But was it a difficult call? Yes. You have to, but I believe that call has to be taken. And what's the criterion to use? The criterion I use is, what do I love to do the most? Because my theory is very simple. My theory is that, and this is true for men and it's true probably also for women who work full-time. But if you, on an average, a person will work for about 35 to 40 years of life. Your working life is about 35 years to 40 years. Take the average lifespan. If you take the average lifespan, and I'm talking about the average active lifespan, and may Allah give you all long and active lives, but the average active lifespan is about 70 years. Right? Now, out of that 70 years, the first, say 15 or even 20 years, most people are no good to nobody. I mean, they are what I call net resource drains. I mean, that's a sort of unkind term to use for young people, but I mean, that's effectively what they are. I mean, they're just taking and taking and taking and taking and taking, and nothing, no contribution at the end of the day. So that's first 20 years of your life. Take out 20 out of 70, you got 50. Divide that by 35, you're looking at 85% of your lifespan. Now, if you are doing something that you don't absolutely love, according to me, then that's a very stupid way of living your life, because you're living 85% of your life doing something you basically don't like. I mean, what kind of life is that? And that's why when people say, I am going off on a holiday because I want to get away from it all, or somebody says TGIF, the American term, TGIF, thank God it's Friday. The first time this happened, this came to India, there's a good friend of mine in Bangalore, a chap called Pradeep Singh, he started a new company. He came, he told me, come over this evening, today we are having a TGIF. I said, who's that? So he says, thank God it's Friday. So I said, come over and do what? He said, it's beer and samosas. So I said, well, I don't drink beer. He said, that's okay, we'll give you something else. So I told him, Pradeep, just give